Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 59th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We're holding by Parshas Toldos. Parshas Toldos is about the fight between Esav and Yaakov, where seemingly Yaakov steals the blessing from Esav. Esav despises his blessing and he hates Yaakov. Here the Torah says at the beginning, chapter 25, verse 22, children are agitated within her, and she said, if so, why am I thus? She went to inquire of Hashem. And Hashem said to her, two nations are in your womb, two regimes from your inside shall be separated, and the might shall pass from one regime to the other. The elder shall serve the younger. So Yitzhak and Rivka both pray. They want to know what's going on. Her stomach's going crazy. Why? What's happening? So God answers, there are two nations in your womb, and they're going to be separated, and it's going to pass from one regime to the other, which is from the older is going to serve the younger. I.e., Esav is older, and he is going to serve Yaakov. Now, the Rabbeinu Yerucham and Das Torah, Rabbeinu Yerucham is the famed spiritual mentor in the Mir Yeshiva, explains that Rashi says that these two in the womb, even from within the womb, are fighting over both worlds. They're fighting seemingly for this world and for the next world. Now, obviously we can't take things, at face value per se, because he says that the rabbis revealed to us an unbelievable fundamental principle over here. And he says that what you have going on is the classic war between the nations and the Jewish people. So Rabbi Yerucham says, I'm going to give you what I think based on what I've seen in the world. And he says, you, my students, are young, but you should take counsel in what I'm saying. You should think, evaluate what I'm saying based on my life experience. So, says Rabbi Yerucham, he said, I was reading from the newspaper, the Stormer. What is the newspaper, the Stormer? Stormer was the newspaper of the Nazis. May their names be blotted out. And he says, I was reading over there all these things that didn't make any sense, what they were saying. So he says, we're already accustomed to the fact of what people say, and what they say against the Jewish people. And what they say against the Jewish people does not make any sense. In other words, one sentence to the next doesn't make any rational sense. And this is what's been going on since we've been sent into exile. So he says before this war, before the Second World War, when they were in the Mir, before this war, they were under the auspices of the Russians. The Bolsheviks were in charge over there. And also, they made all kinds of claims against the Jews. And he said one word to the next didn't make any sense. Just like what the Nazis said didn't make sense. What the Russians said against the Jews didn't make any sense. But he says the claims are the same. They didn't change the claim, but their claims don't make any sense. So people think when they hear people speak against the Jewish people, they think this is an absolute novelty. They think it's an absolute novelty, and that every time it happens, it's like a new thing. But says Rabbi Yerucham, all you have to do is look in history. If you look in history, it hasn't changed. Nothing's changed. Each group comes out against the Jews, whoever they are. They say the same things. Not like they change the arguments any. They say the same exact thing. So why are you looking at it as something new? Not a new thing. So Rabbi Yerucham continues, and he says, if you go through history, the reality is that this has gone on for thousands of years. This has been what's gone on in the exile. That when a non-Jew comes up to a Jew, he starts giving over his own shenanigans, his own stupidity, what he thinks Jews are or whatever. And he'll start giving this whole sermon, this whole drasha, what Jews are and whatever. But again, they're not old. There's not old context over here. It's all the same what other people say throughout the centuries. So he says sometimes people will say the Jews are good. Sometimes they'll say they're bad. Sometimes Jews, they'll say they'll find merit for them. Sometimes they won't. But at the end of the day, he says, we have a way to keep them quiet. We have a way to shut them up. How do we do that? He says, if you look over several years at what these people are saying and how mixed up they are in what they're saying, he says it's not different, as we mentioned, it's not different than what people said previous generations. The question is, how can they repeat the same story and the same lies? It's not like they're making up new things. They're just taking the other things and just bringing them back to life. So says Rabbi Yerucham, imagine someone makes a claim, against a certain person or whatever, and they keep saying the same thing over and over and over. He said it's disgusting. Just shut up. What are you talking about? It's not true. Finished. It's a lie. Finished. He said it's disgusting. Year after year. Generation after generation. It's the same thing that keeps coming up against the Jewish people. I mean, he said it's unbelievable. Don't these people get tired of saying the same thing that the predecessor said, and their predecessor said, and so on, multiply by infinity? You get bored by saying the same thing, no? That's what he says. It's a wonder. It's an absolute wonder. So he says in general, you have to wonder why there is this animosity towards the Jews. The Jews are in their own land, after being in exile for 2,000 years, and they're condemned by everybody. Right? You look at the UN. Israel has more UN condemnations than any nation. Than all the nations combined. And they're 1/1000th of the world's population. Who cares about this land? Why should anybody care? And if you look at, all these rogue nations and states, or whatever you want to call them, they don't get half as many condemnations. Israel fights a defensive war. They warn people, get out of the city, we're going to bomb it. No one does that. They just kill people. Israel's trying to show they're the most humane fighting force in the world. And what do they get for it? Nothing. They just get condemned. It says Rabbi Yerucham, it doesn't matter how many Jews are amongst the nations. Even if you have one Jew in one place, they'll come up with the same claims against them. He says the nation should be embarrassed. They use all their power, all their strength to fight against this nation that's spread out in the world, all over the world. They do what they can to antagonize them, make fun of them, curse them. For what? And they're using all the same arguments as everyone used before. He said, why aren't they embarrassed? Why isn't this disgusting? It's a tremendous wonder over here. Says Rabbi Yerucham, truth is, he says, this war between the nations and the Jewish people has absolutely no reason and purpose behind it. Meaning, it doesn't make any rational sense. If you say the Jews, have money, and we hate them because they have money, but you also hate them if they're poor. You see, in another country, if the Jews are poor, they're still discriminated against. So it can't be because of money. Whatever the reason they're going to come up with these claims, if they don't appear, if these claims don't come up in another country, that means that can't be the reason. So what is the reason? So Rabbi Yerucham says, once the Jews started to assimilate between the nations, wasn't found good in their eyes, well, certainly not in God's eyes, but the nations don't want Jews intermingling with them. They don't want them assimilating in. So therefore, the Jews no good. They don't want them as part of their nation. And they're degraded, looked down upon. So he says that's happened throughout history. And you know what? That's going to continue. It is not going to change. So he says you have to see, well, I'll get to the punchline in a second. He says you have to see this isn't simple at all. Because anyone who has understanding, anyone who has any knowledge to understand, he said, of course it's not something simple. But he says there are tremendous things going on here on a spiritual level. Because this war doesn't make any rational sense. Doesn't make any rational sense whatsoever. And it's not even based on anything. All their arguments is just flush them down the toilet. You really think Jews use non-Jews' blood to bake matzahs? It's an old wives' tale. People have been killed because of that. Now, if you know what the Torah says you're not allowed to eat blood, how would that be permissible? Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it is a good question. What's the answer? Jews still use blood to make matzahs. They use non-Jewish blood for matzahs. Sounds pretty scandalous. Actually, sounds pretty stupid. Right? It sounds stupid because it never happened. It sounds stupid because Jews are not allowed to eat blood. When they kill an animal and it's killed properly, then they stick the meat in cold water to drain the blood, and then they salt it, and salt it, and salt it. That's why kosher meat is extremely salty, because it drains out any excess blood. You're not allowed to eat blood. So what happened to these blood matzahs? Doesn't matter, that's what Jews do. Really? Says Rabbi Yerucham, this war, forever. This war is forever. He said it's just like water and fire. Really, their nature, they're always in contention. You got water, it puts out fire. You got fire, you don't want it to go near water. Right? It's always a fight. So too, between the nations and the Jewish people, it's a fact. It's nature. People hate the Jews. Sorry to burst any bubbles. But even though, the Jews are coming back, and there are more yeshivas than ever, more girls' schools than ever, and, Orthodoxy is growing by leaps and bounds, everyone else in Judaism is dead. Right? They're buried. Reform, gonzo. 80% into marriage. Conservative, not far behind. That's it. Either you're going to be Orthodox or you're going to disappear. Spiritually. So, even with all that, you still have this war against the Jews. Doesn't matter, they're religious. They're not religious. People have an axe to grind against the Jewish people and they don't know anything about them. Says Rabbi Yerucham, yeah, that's not normal. That's absolutely not normal. So he says, this is a war that is a natural war. It's nature. It's nature for non-Jews to hate Jews. Can non-Jews love Jews? Yes. Can they support Israel? Yes. But the reality is, Jews have a bad name. It's nature. You can have the biggest righteous people in the world. People still find things wrong with them in the non-Jewish world. He said it's nature. Because all the claims against us don't make any sense. So then Rabbi Yerucham says an unbelievable thing. And that is, when do you think this is going to end? When do you think this is going to end? Because Rabbi Yerucham just said, it's a natural war. It's going to continue forever. Not going to change. It's part of nature. Says Rabbi Yerucham, this war is going to be forever until Mashiach, until the Jewish Messiah comes. It's not going to end. Just the opposite. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better. He said, that's the reality. The reality is, it's always going to exist. Sometimes it'll be better, sometimes it'll be worse. But it's always going to be there. There's always an undercurrent of it being there. So, Rabbi Yerucham says another thing. We'll flush this idea out a little bit. He says this war is very deep. It's a very, very deep war. Now, what is the essence of it? He says to uproot the root of this stench of the people that hate the Jews. To get rid of them, destroy them. But the issue is that there's a rule. There's a general rule. And the rule is that Esav soina es Yaakov. Esav hates Yaakov because of course he hates Yaakov. Look what happened. Yaakov tricked him. He stole the birthright. So we answered up the whole story with Yaakov and the birthright. Right? That we did in another video. So even if you want to say that's the reason. That's the reason for this hatred. You know, look what Yaakov did to poor Esav. Poor Esav, look what he did. He stole the birthright. Esav didn't want it. Wouldn't know what to do with it. Took what was rightfully his. You know, and if a Jew who's an apostate writes a Sefer Torah, or forget writing a Torah scroll, let's say he has one in his possession, and it's going to get abused, we have the right to take it away from him any way we can. Because he's going to abuse it. Doesn't deserve it. I don't care why it's in his possession. Doesn't deserve it. It's going to contaminate it, corrupt it. So you take it away from him. So you can answer that up by Yaakov and Esav. Even so let's say we don't have an answer. And you say, look what he did. He deserved it. And Esav represents the Western world. Think of the Western world up in arms. You know, against Israel. Okay. I see Rabbi Yerucham says that they were fighting already in the womb. This is before anything happened. They're fighting who's going to take this world and the next. The spiritual world. So even if you want to say what Yaakov did to Esav, it happened before. They're already fighting before. So that's what Rabbi Yerucham comes to answer. Rabbi Yerucham comes to say, this is not natural. Or, sorry, just the opposite. He's saying, this is a natural thing. That the war between the nations and the Jewish people is a natural thing. And it's never going to go away until Messiah comes. until Mashiach comes. So it's something that's going to last forever until that time where it stops. So this is an amazing thing. If you look at it at face value, how can you have the nations in general just despise the Jewish people? Talmud says, when the Jewish people received the Torah, it was given on Mount Sinai. What does the word Sinai mean? It comes from the word sin'ah, hatred. God gave the Jewish people the Torah, made them as special people, and all the non-Jews are upset. The Talmud says. Brought hatred to the world because we have the Torah. Nah. What are you upset about? The Talmud also says God goes to all the nations. And every single nation rejects the Torah. So what do they want from me? We're jealous. We hate you because you have the Torah. You had a choice. You could have the Torah also. You can also join if you want. You go through conversion. But you had a chance. God gave you every opportunity. Tremendous opportunity. When he didn't have to. The Ramchal says up to a certain point, non-Jews could have joined Abraham. Been part of the tribe, no conversion. Not only that, he gave you a lot of time. Because it was really sealed off. The Ramchal says. By the Dor HaFlug, by the generation of separation. That's when they had a chance to join. Otherwise, they would have to go through conversion. But God says, you know what? I'll give you another chance. The Ramchal says, I'll give you up until the giving of the Torah Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai, you still got a chance. I'm going to give you a golden opportunity. Okay? You didn't take it. You didn't want it. So why should you hate me? Why should you despise Jewish people? That's something that's been passed down. Even non-Jews passed that down. You see, it exists in all generations. You don't have it one generation, where Jews are not looked at in a bad light. You don't have it. Again, sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. It's not necessarily in every country, but there's a general rule. And the general rule is this is a natural thing. Why it doesn't seem to serve any purpose? Because if we look at it a step further, we mentioned before, now this whole thing, you look at their claims. Their claims, they keep saying the same thing over and over and over. Gets boring after a while. Come up with something new. We have horns, we have a tail. Come on, spots, freckles, 4 arms. I don't know. Come up with something new. This is boring. You say the same thing. They're money launderers. They take the blood of Christian children when they bake matzahs. They're, brought morality to the world. Said Hitler Yamach Shemo. May his name be blotted out. But you see, they pass down the same stupid things. Give one example. You read Mein Kampf. It's been translated into I don't know how many languages. If you read Mein Kampf, what's it based on? You'd be very surprised to know this. It's based on 95 Theses by Mr. Martin Luther. Probably pretty shocking, no? It's also rabid anti-Semite. But his same stupid claims against the Jews got passed down. Hundreds of years later, Hitler used the same thing. It just keeps going over and over and over and over. So he said, let it stop. God says, it ain't going to stop. It's not going to stop till Mashiach comes. It's something that's in nature. And it doesn't make any rational sense. As we mentioned. So as Rebbe Yerucham said, you want to assimilate out? You want to be like the nations? They're going to hate you. It's just a fact of life. It's just a matter of time. They don't hate you now. They'll hate you later. I've heard a number of stories. People who were, been friends for years. I heard a story actually recently of somebody somebody with very, very close friends for years. For years and years. And these were non-Jews. And this couple decided they wanted to convert. They're going through conversion. And they went out to dinner with these close friends. And the husband drinks a little bit too much. They work together. And this husband came out. I don't know if they worked together or not. That I'm not sure. I don't remember. But they know each other for years and years. This husband gets drunk. The other guy gets drunk. And starts saying all these anti-Semitic things. And the other couples, they were like shocked. Like, we've been friends for so long. It's like one comment after another. Okay, you can say, the guy was drinking. What can he do? He said things he shouldn't have said. He got carried away. But see, the Talmud says, Nichnas yayin, yoytze sod. When wine goes in, secrets come out. So a person has to be very careful. If they drink, they better be careful how much they drink, because there are things that they think they don't want anyone else to know. Even if they believe it or they said it to other people, but they're not going to want other people to know. This guy got drunk enough, or drank enough, that's what he really thought. Just never said it. They've been friends for years. Years. The guy was like totally shocked. Now again, this is going to happen in every case. I'm not going to say in every case. Can you have friends that are non-Jews? Sure. Not saying you can't. But at the end of the day, there's a natural thing that goes on in the world. Says Rabbi Yerucham, it starts with Esav and Yaakov. And from Esav and Yaakov, it goes all the way down. So you're saying that, what we're saying is that in the last 3,000 years, nothing's changed. There's still this hatred. Whether the Jews are on the top, on the bottom, there's still hatred by the nations. And even if they love them, they're still jealous because we got the Torah. Or the Christians will say, we hate you because you killed our Savior. Yeah, so what happened in the Holocaust? Christians said, yeah, Jews deserved it because of that. How many Christians out there, want to listen to what Jews have to say when it goes against what they believe in. And they can rip their quote-unquote philosophies to shreds because they don't make any sense. Historical inaccuracies. Lies. Things that just don't make any sense. Try it out. Try and bring people close if they're really that open-minded. And see, tell things in the Torah. See how far over it goes. How well it goes. I've had people tell me in the past, people say they're open-minded, they want to learn. They say, what about this inconsistency? What about this contradiction? What about... No, they don't want to learn that. It's going to uproot everything they know. Might have to change. Don't want to do that. Yeah, people are not that open-minded. That's probably true. But you want to hear about Judaism? And why Judaism is right? Unless you see the flaws in the other systems, you're not going to want to hear it. You're not going to want to hear it because it's Jews. For no other reason. This might be a radical thing to say here. But look at the world. Look at world history. Vis-a-vis the Jews. And look what's happened over the years. Over the centuries. Antisemitism is nothing new. It's not new 50 years ago. It's not new 100 years ago. You look at the Russians, you look at the Nazis, same thing. Go back further than that, Austro-Hungarian, same thing. Other countries, same thing. Go to Persia, what we now know as Iran. Yeah, Jews are put in their place. They're like the second-class citizens. Why? Because they are. Because that's what they're taught. Why? Because that's what they're taught. Why? You tell me. That's all a travesty of a mockery of a sham. It's the same claim. You just are. You come up with any number of reasons. They're all irrelevant. They're irrelevant because, well, they're lies, most of them. And even if they're things that are true, what gives you the right to hate because of that? Or make up things to cause more hatred. For what reason? So this whole thing, in general, as Rabbi Rucham says, it doesn't make any sense. They're just using the same argument over and over and over. But he said that's nature. That is the nature. Esav sones Yaakov. Esav hates Yaakov. So now you just go 3,000 years later, and you got plenty of nations that hate the Jews. Similar reasons, different reasons, whatever it is. They hate the Jews, period. I don't think there's a nation in the world, you look historically, that's had as many people, many nations hate them as the Jews. Hitler's claim, one of his claims to go against the Jewish people and destroy them is because they brought morality to the world. Well, that's true, we did. Started with Abraham, passed it down to Isaac, passed it down to Jacob. Now we have the Torah. Yeah, the absolute morality. True. So now they're the conscience of the world? No, we can't have that. Wipe them out. And they convinced the masses to do that. And they believed they were doing the right thing. Treated their dogs better than they treated Jews. In an absolutely cruel manner. But even so, you got a madman. Totally crazy. But he got, you can say what you want about the election, but he stayed in power. He killed his own men to kill more Jews. He had more of his men die. Right at the end of the war, they knew they were losing. They needed the cattle cars for munitions and other things. Hitler said, no, we're not going to use them. We're going to use them to kill Jews. And he killed his own people in the process. He didn't care. He was bound to one thing. That was hatred gone crazy. Which God allowed it to happen for whatever reason. So this is something from time immemorial. Something we can't change. Again, doesn't mean it's always going to be bad. It depends when, how, but it's something that's in the air. And as much as we're friendly and this and that, they'll be the first ones to turn on you. See what happened in different countries during the war. During World War II. People were neighbors for years and years. Somehow, these Jews survived, came back. The neighbors almost killed them. Took over their homes. There's a deep underpinning. Of hatred. I think people don't always act on it for sure. You don't think people make comments? Of course people make comments. Jews have more power, a little more swagger today. Well, it's not in vogue, but anti-Semitism is not dead by any stretch. Not just because of the Arabs in every country stirring it up. It's always been there. In all countries. Just what Rabbi Rucham is bringing up, is a tremendous thing here. He's saying you can't look at it at face value. This is something very deep. And again, test it. Look at any other nation in the world. For the amount of time that the Jews have been here. that's been more despised, more pogroms against them than any other nation. Find me a nation even comes close. Nobody. And the racism is still there. So, what can we hang our hat on? The Yerucham says, it's nature. That's the way it is. That's the way it will be. And it's not going to change. Well, very comforting. You have anything nice to say? It's a huge thing. Because this is an eternal thing till Mashiach comes. And you're always going to have these forces against us. No matter what we do. It's only a matter of when. You can be the most humane army in the world. Have the absolute right to defend yourself and you get slaughtered. You get slaughtered, by bad press. War is war. You never want to kill someone intentionally, a civilian. No, but they're the only army in the world that will send out leaflets to people and say, leave, we're going to bomb it. You better leave. Who else does that? So even as moral as they are or claim to be, they still get slaughtered in the press all over the place. So they, what's the answer? We need better press. Yeah, we do. Even so, not going to change. It's not going to change the reality on the ground. May help here and there. And people will say, well, they're a nation, they have a right to defend themselves. Yeah, they do. That's it. They'll do what they can to defend themselves. People come and, throw their kids in the way. Try and be as humane as possible, but war is war. No one else is like that. Yeah, so we brought this morality to the world. Try and be humane and get slaughtered for it. So they say, don't be humane. They don't want the repercussions on that end either. They're trying to at least keep a balance. We're our own worst enemy. Because if we're in the public eye, and someone does something wrong or gets caught or whatever, tremendous desecration of God's name. So you say, look, Jews are corrupt. Get one bad egg, 2 bad eggs, 5 bad eggs. Then you make a statement against everybody. It comes out in so many different ways. But they all revolve around the same thing. A person can be the best guy, this, that. They'll backstab him in the end. You say, not everyone's like that. Things have changed. Things haven't changed. Can individuals overcome it? Yeah. He's saying there's a general nature. That general nature is, there's going to be conflict between the Jews and the nations. And it's always going to be that way, and it started from Esav and Yaakov. Before they even were born. And it's natural. Just the arguments that they make against the Jews are all the same. So he says that's what makes it kind of disgusting, stupid. Why have to keep hearing the same thing over and over? At least come up with some new claims. And the world really doesn't care. The bottom line, and there's a tremendous frenzy, certainly, against Jews, especially if you're pro-Israel today. You got the Arabs fighting very strong, against that on college campuses, other places. It's a very hostile environment. But again, it manifests itself in different ways. Yeah, the Russians did their thing, Nazis did their thing, Arabs do their thing. The so-called enlightened countries do their thing. But it's all the same. It's all bringing out one dramatic point. And that is, we don't like the Jews. There are people who are anti-Semites, they don't even know any Jews. They don't even know what Judaism is. But I know, I've been taught, we don't like Jews. Why? Because we don't. Would you like to clarify that? Yeah, we don't. So how do you argue with that? Can't. It's an impossibility. You know, just to make it even stronger, you're going to have a place that hates Jews and there are hardly any Jews there. You know, Jews got slaughtered in Poland during World War II. You know, Jews coming back there. You know, the small Jewish community there. But there's anti-Semitism. There's anti-Semitism in a place that hardly any Jews. I mean, you have Scandinavian countries, okay, they're more left, this, that. There are hardly any Jews. You know, if you're not talking major scandals or anything else that happened, why in the world would they hate Jews? I don't know, maybe it's the Arctic cold air in the winter. You know, in Norway and Sweden or whatever. But why in the world should they hate Jews? That doesn't make any sense. Unless you say it's just a natural thing in the air. Some people pick it up more, some less, but it's like breathing air. You know, not a very popular thing to say. But Yerucham says that's a reality. It's very deep. It's a very deep reality. Because the Jews are supposed to be spiritual people. And the fight of the non-Jews is to make them not. Who's going to inherit this world and the next? That's why when Yaakov comes up against Esav, Esav's very excited. Because he sees everything that Yaakov has, and Yaakov's very wealthy. He says, if I touch him in this world, and I get him to go sour a little bit in this world, I'll take away the world to come from him also. This is Esav talking. Biggest Baal Taiva there was. A person who gave in to his own desires, killed him. But he understood if he touches Yaakov in physical terms, meaning in this world, he'll knock him out in the next. Because the more you have in this world, the less you're going to do spiritually. Right? You know, when you're busy going to sporting events and movies and this and that go against what the Torah says, Esav says, go ahead. Go have some fun. You know, go to a stadium, 50,000 people. You know, go watch. Go enjoy. Have a good time. Esav says, I'm going to take over. Esav doesn't have to do anything. Just enticing. So when Esav hits Yaakov in this world and cause him to go astray in this world, yeah, it's going to cause big problems in the next world. That's why Yaakov says, yeah, I have plenty. And I have a lot. And he said, when he confronts Esav, and he says, I live with Lavan, and I guarded all the mitzvahs, like Esav cares about mitzvahs. He really cares about any mitzvahs. So why is he telling him that? Because he grew up in Yitzhak's house. So he still understood what mitzvahs were. So Yaakov says, I live with Lavan. I kept the entire Torah. That's true. But you know what that means? That means even under the harshest and most difficult conditions, I kept whatever the Torah told me I need to do. And I didn't compromise. So he says, Esav, my brother, don't get confused by all the wealth. God gave it to me. He wants me to have it for whatever reason. But I'm the same Yaakov. I'm the same spiritual person who's going to keep growing and growing and growing. Doesn't matter what's around me, and I'm not going to budge. Torah's not going to budge me one way or another. I'm going to do what God wants me to do and what the Torah says. You can try and do whatever you want. I ain't moving. And that's how he stood up to Esav. Because he said, you can't touch me in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, I'm not giving up. I'm going to fight for all the spirituality in the world. I have to live in the physical world, that's true. I have an evil inclination like everyone else has an evil inclination. But I'm going to fight for spirituality. So you can try and do what you want. You ain't going to budge me. That's when people say, oh, the Orthodox are so stringent and this and that. Yeah, we're not going to budge. You know why we're not going to budge? Because when you budge, you lose. Right, let's go down that line. 70%, 80% into marriage. Let's change everything. Go ahead. That's not Judaism anymore. That's why we're very strong in the laws of Shabbos, Kashrus. We don't budge. Doesn't matter what's thrown at us. You want to disallow ritual slaughter? Fine, we'll bring it in. We won't slaughter in your country. We'll bring it in. Or we won't eat meat. We got you. It's illegal to slaughter kosher meat. To make meat kosher. Okay? We'll get it from somewhere else. You can't get it. We're not going to allow it to come in the country. Okay? We'll be vegetarians. Boy, you guys are fanatics. What do you want us to do? We should eat non-kosher? Not going to happen. We should give in, sell our souls to the devil? No. Means we're not going to budge. That's why Judaism sticks with us and no one else. And that's why in future generations, there's going to be offspring. In the other so-called movements, no offspring, dead. Fanatics, stuck up, you can say whatever adjective you think fits. Yeah, we're only 10% of the Jewish people. Maybe 15%. True. But in the future generations, who's going to be there? It's going to be us. Us fanatics. It's okay. We're like Yaakov. We ain't going to budge. Torah is what it is. It doesn't change. Makes us into who we are. But there's also such a thing out there, and we tell Esav that all the time. Such a thing called integrity. Right? That's a whole different video. But, there's an obligation to have integrity. And that means that when the chips are down, doesn't matter. You do what the Torah says you have to do. Finished. You're not budging. Because you believe in absolute truth. You want to believe in fantasy? Fantasy sells real well. Doesn't stick, but it sells. So hold on to it. Make it up as you go along. Turn the Torah into a pretzel. Go ahead. What are the results? I'll tell you what the results are. A mule. There's only one problem with the mule. Sterile. You want to be part of something sterile? Okay, grab it. Take it. Because fantasy is good. Because people don't want truth. Too afraid. Too afraid to make a move. Might have to change. Someone once told me that I'd rather not look into the Torah and see if it's true, because if I find out it's true, then I have to change. I'm not willing to do that. At least this person was honest. Everybody else out there, there's no intellectual honesty. It's about putting ketchup or mustard on my hot dog. Ketchup, mustard. People aren't thinking. They don't care. They're apathetic. You know what apathy is in short? It's like sticking smoke, inside your lungs. Say, okay, breathe. Right? You can't breathe, you suffocate. Right? You can't get it out quick enough, you suffocate. So you put all this other garbage that you've seen, that you've done. What does it do? It suffocates the soul. Suffocates the neshama. Does it mean the neshama is dead? No. But it's like it needs a snorkel in order to breathe. Not impossible. But you have to want it. You have to desire it. You have to show also, whatever you're going to do it 100%. And you're not going to go to the left or the right because the Torah is real. Because that's why we're still here today. If you didn't have a Torah, you didn't have a Talmud, you didn't have an oral tradition, there would be no Jews today. Would have totally disappeared. Our nation, the Jewish nation, is strong only because of Torah and the oral tradition. That's it. Not because of Zionism, not because of the state of Israel, not because of anything else. It's because we're true to the Torah. You don't want to be true to the Torah, you're going to disappear. You want to intermarry, that's going to cause pogroms and Holocaust. Exactly what's going to happen. So if there's hatred in the world, we have to stick together and do what we need to do. And that is to grab on to the Holy Torah as much as possible and keep it to the best of our ability. I want to mention also that I give a class in Derech Hashem. We're actually speaking now about the nations and where the nations fit in everything. It's every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock New York time. I also give conversion classes and Noahide classes as well. Anyone interested can take a look at my Facebook fan page, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism, or Beyond Noahides. Can take a look at my blog, orthodoxconversion.com. Anyone wants to contact me at rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a great Shabbos!